Aperture.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm Sarah Meister, and I am the Executive Director of Aperture. For those of you who are not familiar with Aperture, it was founded in 1952 by a group of photographers, writers, and curators, including Dorothea Lange, Ansel Adams, Nancy and Beaumont Newhall, and several others, as a common ground for photography. For 70 years, Aperture has connected all corners of the photo-curious community in print, in person, and more recently, online. Tonight, we are thrilled to celebrate International Women's Day with a conversation made possible by Converse, with the singularly talented artists Thalía Gochez and Helen Alonzo Hurtado from Las Fotos Project, a community-based nonprofit organization in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles, that inspires teenage girls and gender-expansive youth through photography, mentorship, and self-expression. Thalía Gochez is the 2021 Photos Awards Editorial Awardee and a self-taught Salvadoran Mexican-American visual artist based in Los Angeles. Her work aims to uplift and amplify various BIPOC identities, especially Latinx women, through subject-led storytelling photographs and vibrant, stylized portraits. Gochez's work is featured on the cover of Aperture magazine's current issue, Latinx. Here it is. Helen Alonzo Hurtado is a Salvadoran-American social entrepreneur and educator. As the social enterprise manager for Las Fotos Project, she combines her personal passion for youth development with her professional passion of building financially sustainable nonprofit organizations. Alonzo Hurtado graduated from the University of Southern California with a master's degree in public administration, and she holds a BA in sociology from UCLA. Support for Aperture magazine is provided by the Kanakia Foundation, by John Stryker and Slobodan Randelovich, and by Thomas and Susan Dunn. Lead support for the Latinx issue of Aperture magazine is provided by the Philip and Edith Leonian Foundation. And tonight's conversation is made possible by a partnership with Converse. Please be sure to submit any questions you might have through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to get to them before the end of the evening. Thank you all for joining us. And now I'd like to hand it over to Helen and Thalía. Probably. Hello, welcome. Okay, I'm going to mute myself and enjoy your talk. See you at the end.
Thank you, Sarah, for that kind introduction. Hi, Thalía.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, Helen. How are you?
Good. How are you? It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. Yeah, Helen. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Thank you so much, Aperture. I'm so happy to be here. I'm actually very honored and, nervous, but also it feels really great to talk to Las Fotos Project. It's an organization that's really near and dear to my heart. So in a way, it feels like I'm just talking to family. Helen, I just wanted to give the mic to you, and you just explain to everyone what Las Fotos Project is, and just give us a breakdown.
Thank you, Thalía. It's so great to be in conversation with you. We have so much love for you and the way you support our youth. Just to share a little bit about Las Fotos Project, our mission is to elevate the voices of teenage girls and gender-expansive youth from communities of color through photography and mentorship, encouraging our youth to channel their creativity for the benefit of themselves, their community, and their future careers. Since we started in 2010, we've provided more than 60,000 hours of free arts programming, primarily in the east side of Los Angeles. We've worked with more than 1,300 students in those 10 years. And on top of that, we worked with more than 450 local artists who have volunteered their time to be one-on-one mentors for our youth. Cumulatively, they've actually provided more than 22,000 hours of one-on-one mentorship and care for our youth. And as you can see in the images here, our students explore photography in their community, they explore photography within our studio space, and they actually are able to channel their creativity through one of our three core programs. The first actually being Esta Soy Yo, which stands for This Is Me. And we utilize a therapeutic photography methodology for our students to explore their identity. We encourage them to take the camera lens and reflect it on themselves and their experiences. And this is actually a photo created by one of our youth this past semester, Melania Espinal. It's actually inspired by William Camargo, who was featured in the Latinx issue along with Thalía. It's honestly one of my favorite pieces from this past semester, but I say that about every work our student creates. So we also have a program called Digital Promotoras, in which our students are able to explore their community and really advocate for it through photojournalism. This photo was actually taken by our student, Stephanie Gutierrez, this past semester as well, in a photo essay that she created honoring her father and the work that they've done and just the challenges and tribulations they've overcome. And I think it's a really beautiful photo essay and a really beautiful tribute to their father. And then finally, we have our CEO program, which stands for Creative Entrepreneurship Opportunities. This is a program that allows our students to really explore what a career in the creative economy would look like. They do this through weekly classes focused on different styles of photography, from editorial, event photography, portraiture, and they're able to take those skills and apply them on the job in real time, getting experience as paid photographers. We've done event photography for galas, to foundation dinners, to the red carpet at the Golden Globes. And you can see from their work here, our students are really interested in exploring editorial and product photography. And it's actually these photos taken by Michelle Montenegro and Maria I wanted to highlight because they're actually students that Thalía most recently worked with on our Converse campaign. And you know, through our CEO program is actually how we started this amazing, amazing friendship with Thalía. Thalía has been working with our youth as the principal photographer. Our youth has posed for her. They've photo assisted on different campaigns. And I'd love to share some of those images on the next slide. So these were actually taken by our student Carolina Ferreira in 2019 in the first project we ever worked with Thalía, thanks to an amazing Latina creative director, Diana Mayfield, for facilitating an introduction for us that just started this beautiful friendship. Carolina was able to photo assist on this campaign and gained a lot of real world experience. And it's just grown from there. In the next slide, we'll see some more images from that beautiful Forever 21 campaign that was shot right down the street from our old office space in Lincoln Heights. And it was really fun to, you know, be involved in a project. And Thalía, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about these Forever 21 Loteria images and what they meant to you.
Yeah, by the way, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. It makes me so happy to like hear Las Fotos Project excelling in that way. I feel like it's a crucial organization for young creatives to have that accessibility to explore their creativity. So all my love to you, Helen, always in the organization. Yeah, so this photo shoot was for Loteria, Forever 21. And I was heavily involved in the process, down to the scouting locations and casting. It was really important to me that the models that were casted were from Los Angeles and had roots here to the land and to just to the culture that we were trying to highlight. So that was really important to me. And that's kind of like a very common, important thread throughout my work. It was just really amazing to have that sort of like visual representation in front of the camera, but also that like positive impact outside of the camera as well. Because you can have the most amazing pure intentions, but if it's not led by like actual impact that's creating change, I feel like it's not like it's kind of just like hopes and dreams. So it was really beautiful. That's why it was really important to me to, I think a yes for this project was that Las Fotos Project was involved. And then they created like kind of equitable opportunities for the youth, which was really just like a huge selling point. That whole experience down to just the creative director, who is actually my mentor, just really honoring, yeah, my process was just, it was amazing. It was really beautiful. Everyone on set down to like my photo assistant was like Latinx. So that was really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Thalía. I know Diana's just an amazing mentor, I think, to everyone she meets. And I'm so glad that you have that relationship with her, because mentorship is a big part of what we do here at Las Fotos Project. Without our mentors guiding us, teaching us, supporting us, affirming us, what type of representation would we see in this field, right? Like, we need those folks who uplift each other. So thank you for sharing that. You kind of actually touched on this about the importance of like the people you work with in your images. So I'm really excited to highlight these two side by side, because, you know, it was so fun to work on the recent Converse campaign with you, in which you were able to photograph, you know, alumni and current students of Las Fotos Project, including Carolina, who was your photo assistant on the Loteria campaign, was now in front of the camera for you. And then Michelle, who's a current Las Fotos Project student, you know, actually posed for you in 2019, and then getting to work with her again in 2022, with her being not only in front of the camera, but also behind the camera shooting BTS for this campaign. Like, what's this experience like for you to photograph young people that you met years ago and now seeing them step into their own creative practice?
I mean, it's deeply moving, you know, it's beautiful to see the evolution of these young creatives, but also it's not this like, it really just feels like I was shooting my friend, you know? And I think that's what's like so important to understand, that it's not just because it was this like huge, you know, partner that I collaborated with, Converse, it still felt like I was shooting, you know, my homegirl, like my friend. And it's just, it wasn't until she kind of brought it to my attention, like, oh my gosh, like, look, we shot in 2019 and now we're shooting again in 2022. And that I kind of was flabbergasted. I was like, oh my goodness, like, you've grown so much. Like, look at the evolution, just like not even physical, but like, you know, mental, like how much you've grown and how you've grown an interest in the creative field. And it just is beautiful. It's like everything that I would ever want in this creative career, you know?
Definitely. And you kind of touched on this, Thalía, and I was hoping you can share a little bit more about, like, how do you find a balance between your own personal art practice and then the work you create for brands?
I think that if you see my like portfolio, or if you see my Instagram feed, you won't really know the difference between my personal work or my like campaign commercial work. And I think that's kind of been my, I don't know, my strongest strength, is that I don't see a difference in that. I have like a strong creative, just like perspective, and I feel like it's not, I can't change that. It's like who I deeply am inside, you know? I think that's when a lot of folks, like creatives, ask me like, how did you get to this point of like, you know, getting these partnerships with these big brands, and where did you apply? Like, what did you do? And I just said that I've always felt like I just knew what I wanted to say from the very beginning. If you go down to my first photo shoot, it's always been the same message, and it's been to like empower and give like provide a safe space from what we can guarantee, because you can't entirely guarantee a safe space because we don't know what the world will bring to us. But for in that moment, what we can create is just like a breath of just like peace and just joy. And I feel like that's always been a common theme. And I think a lot of it kind of mirrors in the photos of like vibrancy, and how I choose to shoot my subject is from like a downward angle to kind of have like a regal cool vibe effect. Yeah, to answer your question, I feel like there isn't no difference. Like if I'm not doing commercial campaign work, then I'm shooting folks that I would normally shoot, both with paid and non-paid, like there's no difference. And sometimes I'm not saying this is like the only way to treat your art, but it's the way that's kind of felt most authentic to me.
I love that, Thalía. Thank you. I was just thinking, you actually answered my next question, is like, how do you bring your full self into the work? But I think after working on so many projects with you, I feel like, and you can elaborate on this, but like you treat people with such care and intentionality. Like you make every person around you feel seen and important. And I'm wondering, like, how do you prepare yourself to bring your full self into the work you create? Like, what are things that you need to do to care for your own self before you can care for the people you work with?
I mean, that's just like a huge question, because it comes down to just like, how do you take care of you, like an artist and you, it's the same person. I don't separate that identity. It's how I view the world. It's how I interact with the world. It's how I, just who I am, so I think it's a balance of just self-care, like learning when to give. I think it's been hard. Like in the beginning, I would come back from shoots extremely depleted, almost like depressed, like just feeling, because it was like such an energy suck. And I think throughout just growing up a little bit and learning how to preserve that energy, I've grown like different maybe tools to kind of handle that like intense exchange, because it isn't just like me showing up on the camera and taking photos. Like I'm trying to highlight their story in a real authentic way. So that happens by like getting to know them and learning them, but also creating just like a friendship, and I think a lot of the times, like in the beginning, I didn't know how to maneuver that energy. It felt like my heart was on the floor every time, and I was just trying to like sew back the pieces to my body. But now I feel like I have like certain limits within myself, but also I feel like I just try to not like almost try to separate my like self-care routine towards like my like art and how I like show up on set, so if I know that I'm having like a really big shoot one day, then I'll make sure to like hydrate. Like it's like simple things, but it's like those parts of our brain need to be fulfilled so we can like be our best selves. So I'll hydrate, I'll make sure to eat like kind of lighter, I'll go on more like walks, like stuff like that. I know it sounds so silly, but I feel like that's like a huge process for me.
No, it's not silly at all. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that, and like how you were feeling in your early shoots versus like the techniques that you now do today to make sure that you can be like present and like creating and also like caring for yourself as a person. I feel like so often we don't do that. Like we discount that, and like the fact that you're bringing that into the space is important. It's important for our youth at Las Fotos Project to see as well. Like, it's important to take care of oneself before going out and creating, because the work you do is relationship based, every single person that you work with. And I guess, that brings me to my next question is like, how do you choose the people you work with? I know for the Loteria campaign, it was important for the folks to be from the neighborhood that you photographed in. And for Las Fotos Project, this campaign was important for it to be students and alumni. But for some of your personal work, how do you choose the people who fit for you?
I approach every person, I approach every shoot differently. And sometimes it's like the actual, person that inspires the creative, or it's this really amazing creative vision that I have. And I scout who would fit that best, so it's no like black and white process. It's very much like what I'm feeling at the time. Instagram is a great platform to scout, but also like back in the day when you're just going up to people scouting folks, I think recently, and we'll see a personal shoot in the next couple slides, but there was, yeah, actually her to the left, her name is Yesenia. She's the subject that's looking back. That was in her family's restaurant. I actually went up to her at like the grocery store. And I've never really done that, but she had, it was sort of like this like really beautiful moment where she was in line and she had like, you know, her baby on her hip. I think she had just gotten out of work. She had her work clothes on, but I was like looking at like, not like a creep, but I was like looking at her from afar, just like kind of like mesmerized by her like strength, how she was like, just had a long day and was, you know, making sure she got her groceries and simultaneously being a mother. And obviously, and of course she's beautiful as well, you know? And I just was incredibly like starstruck almost. And I told myself like, just go, you have nothing to lose. Just like go up there and tell her that you're a photographer. So I did. She was like walking in the parking lot and I kind of like ran up on her and she was confused. She was like, wait, what? Like, she thought I wanted to take photos of her baby. And I'm like, no, I don't want to take photos of your baby. I'm a photographer. And I showed her my Instagram. She's like, yeah, it felt like I was talking to my friend. She's like, yeah, I'm down. And we ended up like chatting for a couple months until we kind of solidified a plan. But we're actually from the same neighborhood, and the restaurant that her family owns is like super near and dear to my heart. So it almost felt like it was a line before it was a line. Like we kind of knew each other in a different way. And yeah, it ended up being one of my favorite photo shoots so far because it was just so natural. But yeah, that's one way. And another way is just seeing their vibe on Instagram. Like if they have really cool, different style. And I think I look for a lot of like maybe confidence, like having that inner confidence is really amazing. But also sometimes it's just visually, I like how, you know, like they present themselves in the world, you know. It really just depends. A lot of the times too, it's like I'll have, and we'll go to the next slide. I'll have like a creative, let's see here. No, it's the next one, but we can go back to that. We can talk about that later. But anywho, I had like a vision of highlighting like two multicultural identities, dos sangres, which means two bloods. Because that's deeply like my experience as being someone that's Mexican Salvadorian. I really wanted to highlight that and what that like experience is like. And so I ended up finding someone on Instagram, her name is Anya, that actually shared that same identity of being both Mexican Salvadorian. And it just worked. And we had several phone conversations. It ended up being one of my favorite photo shoots I've ever done. Yeah, so it's really just like situational. Every photo shoot's different.
Thank you for sharing. There was something that you said in there that really resonated with me, especially because we're having this conversation on International Women's Day. But the fact that the woman immediately thought that you wanted to photograph her baby, like what a maternal instinct, but you were like seeing her and acknowledging her and affirming her. And I just think that's so beautiful. And like those images that you created, you know, show her as a strong, like gaze, just looking at you, being so confident, so sure. And I know you kind of touched on this about shooting from a downward angle, but like, I mean, you see it in these images right now. Every single time I look at your image, Thalía, I'm immediately drawn to the eyes of the person who's sitting for you. And I'm wondering if you can like tell me more about this choice of yours to document folks in this way.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I feel like I think my initial reaction to the question is like, I feel like it just shows the dynamic that we have off the camera. So a lot of the times, like I'm building friendships with these folks, you know, the relationship doesn't end when the camera gets, you know, put down or when I stop clicking. Like I'm continually trying to like actually be a friend in my like subjects' lives. You know, I'm not just trying to like capture this moment and then discard the dynamic or the friendship. Like that just has never been my approach to my creative practice. So I think the staring, like the gazing back at me, is like kind of like a symbol of trust to me. Like they trust me, they're looking at me, and they're confident in me that I'm capturing them the way that they want to be captured. That's how I interpret that. But you know, it's up to anybody else's interpretation too, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's something, I don't think I touched on this earlier, but you know, Thalía has graciously given her time to like be a guest speaker in our classes and to like share about her work. And I think for us, a conversation that we have a lot in this space is just like the people you choose to sit for you, the way you pose them, the way that you can tell their gaze has trust with you. You know, it's so important because we're inspired by seeing representations of ourselves in your images, but also then knowing that there's representation behind the camera as well. Like you're bringing it from so many different angles and like inspiring our youth. And so I'm wondering for you, like thinking back on your teenage self and thinking back on who you needed when you were 13 to 18 years old, what's something that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Ooh, that's, I mean, that's a really, I think when I was a teenager, like 13 to 18, that was a really hard time for me emotionally. I was grieving a lot. I didn't really have a creative practice as much. I knew I was creative. I knew I loved to experiment my creativity with fashion, but I didn't have like a solidified creative practice. And I was also dealing with a lot of you know, mental health issues, grieving. But I think also when I look back at it, it was more just like not having a window of just saying like sanctuary within my creative practice. Like I didn't have that, you know? So that's why I feel like I give so much of myself to Las Fotos Project, because it's like something I wish I had at that age, you know? Yeah, I get emotional about it.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I get emotional about it too. I feel like, you know, coming into this space every day and working with our students and seeing like their creativity, their stories shine through. And then it makes me just feel excited to work here and be in this space, but then also getting to collaborate with folks like you who, you know, affirm our youth and also show them what is a potential for their life. You know, we can't become what we can't see, you know? And I feel like that's why we so appreciate our relationship with you. And like, oh wow, you got me emotional. But I was just even thinking about how this past year, our students, you know, honored you with the photo awards this past year for the editorial. Like, what was that experience like for you to get an award, you know, chosen and by Las Fotos Project students as being like the photographer of the year for them?
Oh my God, I cried like a little baby. Like that was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. I felt like, I'm like, damn, y'all really love me. It felt really great. It felt like I think you had touched bases on like representation. I think that's very true. And in the beginning, that was very like a common word that I would kind of like attach myself to. And now I'm kind of more about like impact, like how do I make impact, real impact in folks' lives? And whether it's the folks that I'm shooting or actually that I'm like, you know, that are assisting me, like students that are, you know, in my life, I feel like that's where I'm at. I think we can have the greatest, and I touch on this with you outside of you know, this space, that I think, you know, you can have the purest of intentions, but if like the impact of your intentions is like negative, I feel like that's something that I try to like maneuver more. Like, okay, I can have the intention of shooting these folks in this particular setting, but how do I feel the impact of this? Like, what will happen? And I know I'm not, God, and I can't predict all these things, but I feel like that's kind of where I'm less about like visual representation and more like, how does it look like outside of the camera? Are these folks getting paid like equitably? Are they like, there's so many ingredients that go into like making sure that I feel good on set, it's like a certain recipe, whether it's like the actual aesthetic of it and, the styling, or the actual like technical, like lighting aspect, or like, the pre-pro, like, what are we trying to do here? What's like the actual message that we're trying to convey? These are all like sort of ingredients to make this recipe of like this visual of what you're seeing here. It's not something that's just like, I wouldn't say that it's like heavily calculated, but it's heavily thought out. And like, there's a lot of like labor almost, I hate saying that word, but like that goes into it,
I know what you mean. It's not labor. It's something else. I think we'll have to just come up with a new word for it. But it's interesting because you touched a little bit about pay, and that's something we talk about with our students a lot in our career training program. And I think the fact that you even approach things like, what is equitable pay? How are we compensating the people working with us, who, like, from the assistants and lighting to who's posing in front of you? Like, I think it's important just to keep those conversations transparent and open. And like, I appreciate you just even sharing with our students, like, how you approach your work and working with brands and things like that, because our students are learning to navigate those conversations right now with 17, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds when they're stepping out of our program. And I just appreciate you for keeping that centered in your work as well.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, go
ahead. No,
go.
No, I think what I wanted to say is like, I feel like there's, I think I like to shoot all various identities, but also there's something to be told. It's a privilege to have access to certain spaces that I shoot. And I feel like with that privilege comes, I feel like Spider-Man comes great responsibility. There needs to be those like transparent conversations about pay. Like all the folks that I shoot, like my personal shoots, like I pay them out of my pocket. It's even, and some photographers don't do that, but that's like a very important thing for me. Yeah, that's all I want to say.
No, I love that, and thank you for sharing that. Like, it is important, and it is to honor people's time and their efforts. And so I love that you do that. I didn't know you did that. That's amazing. I know we're starting to near a little bit of time, but I would love to just ask about what you're working on next. Like, what is exciting you for 2022? Because 2021 was a big year for you. So what's going on in 2022 for you?
There's so many things going on, but I'm really excited to, I'm making a book, a photo book, and it's called De Donde Eres, because I've had like, where are you from? It translates to where are you from? And it stems from just interactions at the supermarket or anywhere with my family, like specifically my mom, when I feel like she's from Mexico. She was born and raised in Mexico. I'm a child of an immigrant, and how she navigates the world, and when she would go to grocery stores, I feel like a common sentence that she would say before meeting someone would be like, oh, de dónde eres? Like, where are you from? Like, and some people would be like, where are you from? Like, but to that, if you're a child of immigrant, that they're asking, where's your birthplace? Like, because it's not America, and so I feel like, yeah.
I'm like hella laughing right now, because we just had, we're right here on Cesar Chavez on Boyle Heights. People are always coming into our space to see. And a lady just came in an hour ago and poked her head in, looked at our student artwork on the wall, and then turned to me and said, ¿De dónde eres? And just asked me that question. So I'm laughing because that's an amazing title for your collection of work.
Yeah, definitely. It's just gonna be highlighting. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's like, it makes me feel like I'm going somewhere with this. But it's definitely, it's just gonna highlight various like immigrant stories, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited about it.
Um, do you have any other questions for me or
Yeah,
anything else
I
you
was
would want to discuss?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, how do you see Las Fotos Project expanding to different parts of the country? Like, I feel like we need them in every school, like around every neighborhood, you know?
Yeah, I think that would be a dream. I think that would be a dream. It's not something we're discounting. It's not a focus for now, but who's to say 5 years from now? It would be amazing to see a Las Fotos project in another state. You know, the ability to work with youth of color is not just confined to Los Angeles. It's not just confined to the Bay Area or New York or Chicago. Like we always think about these big cities, but you know, if there's anything that the pandemic taught me was actually the importance of like these programs and making them accessible. You know, during the pandemic, we were able to serve students for the first time, like students in Arizona and students in like Central California. And it was really a beautiful experience. And like now wanting to do more of that, like how can we grow? How can we serve more youth? But at this time, definitely not expanding, but I don't know. The dream is there. Thalía, maybe you can come help us open
Yeah, we gotta holler at those
a
investors.
satellite location.
I'm down. I'm always down, Helen.
I know it's I think we're most excited for just like the upcoming stuff we have with you, like, you know, our photo walk with our youth here in Boyle Heights. I think you know, how do you view your role as a mentor for youth today?
Well, I feel like it never ends. Like, I feel like I need a mentor. Like, I think looking back at the mentorship that I've gotten has been absolutely pivotal to my career. Like, I remember the first campaign that I shot was for Nike. And at that point, I had never even stepped foot on set. I'd just been shooting, you know, my friends in their neighborhoods and just having a good old time. And I remember getting the email from Nike and feeling like it was a joke first. And then also being completely terrified, like actual fear, an incredible, like crippling anxiety, because I had no idea how to even formulate like a proper email, an invoice, like just industry language was completely not in my vocabulary. And that it caused me actually a lot of pain during that time because I felt very lost. And it wasn't until I had Diana, who I always tell her she's my mentor, but like she's never said that. I'm like, you're my mentor, but she kind of guided me through a lot of those experiences. I would I felt like I had annoyed her a lot of the times because I would just send her texts like, what does this mean? What does that mean? Like, just really like very small things that I just had no idea about. So with that said, I see the power of mentorship and what that's done for my life and my career. And I just feel like we constantly need to pay it forward, you know? And if I don't claim to know everything, I don't claim to be an expert, but I feel like I'm a strong believer in not gatekeeping knowledge and making knowledge like accessible. So if I have any tips or experiences that, you know, can really help folks that are a little younger than me, then I'm gonna like, you know, let them know. And it's whether they want to listen to it or not.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I literally had coffee with Diana on Saturday, and I think I told her, Diana, you're my mentor too, because the knowledge that she has and just in everything. I think as women, you know, we have so many different facets of our identity. Like we can be artists, we can be educators, we can be mentors, but then also like if we choose to do so one day, we can be moms, we can be partners, we can be we're balancing so many identities and so many things, and it's important to see and like seek guidance from those around us. And so, yeah, I agree with you about Diana. Definitely a mentor. I'm glad.
Round of applause to
Support
Diana.
system.
If you're on here right now, Diana, I'm giving you all my love. Like, you have no idea. You changed my life, literally.
I guess we're supposed to move forward into the questions, right, Sarah? Bring me back on here.
First of all, I just want to say thank you both so much. Your mutual love and respect for one another and for the work that you're doing. It's a privilege to hear you both speak together. So I'd like to just take one moment to honor that because it was very moving for me, and I'm sure for the other people who are on this call. There have been a few questions that have come in. If there are others, you can put them in the Q&A and I'll do my best to get to them. The first one to the question of where are you from, and I won't try to say it in Spanish, but Thalía, maybe you would talk for a minute about how you found your way into photography, sort of what was your path, sort of. So if we were to say, not where are you from, in the sense that your mom is expecting the answer, but where are you from in the sense of how that could be an example to other photographers in other places, and just curious people like me and the editor of Aperture who actually asked that question.
Right. So how I got started was I actually have no like classically trained background in photography. I started by just, I took like a fashion merchandising class at a community college. I never really excelled in academia. I didn't really know what I was doing. I moved to San Francisco when I was 18 with like one suitcase, and I stayed in my friend's couch, and I just decided to go to community college and take a fashion class because I always, I just really loved fashion and style and just all that jazz. And it wasn't until I had, it wasn't until I took a styling class, and I worked with the photographer who was really great. He did an amazing job, but I felt like I wanted to take the camera away from him a lot and just, shoot it myself. So that week I went to my like flea market, the Buga, and I got a disposable like 35 millimeter just point and shoot camera. And it was, people don't believe me, but it was literally $1. Like I got it for $1, and it was like a Minolta. And I shot, like, I just started to shoot my own and conceptualize my own shoots and style it myself. And amazingly, I guess it caught wind and people really loved it. And I don't know. I don't know how it started. Honestly, I just feel like I just started shooting and just it manifested in this like beautiful thing, but yeah, go to the swap meet and get a camera is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, by the way, I can't say I think it would work that well for everyone, but I'm really glad that worked for you. Las Fotos might be a better path for, at least if you're living in the LA area. So another question that came in was asking if you would please elaborate on your reference to intention and impact. This person is interested in mainly exploring colonial intention and its impacts on your work. So
yeah, thank you for asking that. I think impact, like how I visualize it, is like, how do the folks being photographed feel after the shoot? How are they feeling in their body and in their life? And how does like my community receive my art? I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't care, I just shoot. Or I mean, I don't know, maybe some people do care, but I value like that like perspective of, do they feel seen through my work? Like, how is the impact there? And then also, if there is critique, like, how do I provide space to be open to critique, and not just say like, oh, they're a hater, and but like really kind of like input of what they're trying to say. I mean, I think there is times where can be like malintended, or it could be like constructive. So really navigating that. But I think impact is like how do they yeah, like how do folks just can perceive my work? And a lot of it too, from like a colonial standpoint, is like kind of breaking those like beauty standards of what is deemed, you know, like palatable. I think I'm constantly working on that because I'm constantly working that as an individual, you know, who I am as a woman in this world, and my privileges, being, you know, as a light skin, like just like a lighter skin complexion, Latina, and what that means, you know? Yeah.
Thank you. That was a great answer. If you don't mind, and people, there's still a moment or two, so you can still get in a question, but I had one other just of my own, because you spoke about these dichotomies, or for you, what aren't the dichotomies of the personal and the commercial, and how these are kind of indistinguishable in your Instagram feed, and then you were also asking about expanding Las Fotos to other regions. And so I was wondering if there are other dichotomies that you see yourself overcoming, whether it's local and national, or whether it's printed and digital, you know, how you think of the form of what you're making, as another form of dichotomies that you address in your work. Are there other dichotomies that interest you, either by ignoring them or attending to them?
Yeah, I mean, what's dichotomies mean?
No, sorry.
I'm like, girl, you need to help me out. What does that mean?
Okay, by the way, first of all, thank you for keeping me honest. So I think of a dichotomy is of something like two things that are different from one another, but sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. So the personal work and the commercial work in the history of photography, sometimes people think of those things as, oh, you can do commercial work or you can do your personal work. But what you've managed to do, and what you've said so beautifully, is that you think of these together. And so I was thinking then about other things that are sort of different, but that maybe for you, you hold them in balance in a different way. So the idea of local and national, you know, this is an organization and you're an artist who's anchored in LA, but how that same thought or intention or kind of practice could be applied to other parts of the country. And then the last part, and I think this was what really made it not seem real, is that, you know, I'm a recovering photo curator, which means that for a long time, I always thought about photographs as objects, as things. How are they printed on a magazine? How are they printed in a book? How do you see them on a wall? And so another dichotomy or another difference that I'm wondering how you think about it is, when you think of something printed or sort of having a physical form, and your work circulating digitally, I'm just curious, like, how these things relate in your mind. You know, that for some people, they're very different, and maybe I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for elaborating on
No,
that.
by the way, thank you for asking me to elaborate, because the first time I asked it, I think it was actually a sort of weird and not very well-formed question. So
No, it was good. I think, well, first, like, to kind of like circle back on to like the more local and like kind of national impact. I feel like for me, my dream is always to have like global impact, you know, like to have like a global perspective being heard and seen. And I also think like there's a lot of beauty in having tangible prints in your hands, you know, but also I think it's really beautiful that I can just post a photo and someone in around the world can view it, someone in Brazil or someone in what, I don't know, anywhere. And it's that accessible and readily available. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've just, I hope this answers your question.
Well, I actually think what it means is you transcend these things. In other words, things that might be different or barriers for other people, you've found a way in your work and in your approach to say, you know, you don't see them that way. Like, and I think that suggests that's probably part of the impact of your work. There are two other questions. Helen, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I would love to add to that, just because you gave the example of being a recovering photo curator. You know, we have an amazing team at Las Fotos Project, and my colleague, Jessie Castillo, has done an amazing work in getting our student artwork out there, not just like living within our gallery walls or just not living within Instagram. And so something that we've done is that actually, if you're around the east side of LA, you'll see our student artwork up in bus stops, and it's like public art installations. Or if you walk by our gallery space, Jesse's put up these amazing installations in our window where folks can scan a QR code and see our student work and read their words, both in English and Spanish. And I think, you know, there's so many ways that I think we're balancing, like you said, that tension of print and digital, or like, how do we bridge those things? But I feel like,
or even language, like you were saying,
or even language. Yeah, like, I feel like, just with how Thalía approaches her work with anything, it's just like intentionality and finding opportunities for connection that are super important.
And there's a really good question to both of you, so I'll let you answer it as you see fit, that says, you both touched on the importance that mentorship has brought to you both in your respective careers in terms of knowledge, experience, inspiration, and support. What do you recommend to folks who don't have such direct access to mentorship opportunities? For instance, young people who don't live in a major metropolitan city with as many creative or professional resources. What are some ways that you might suggest that they can find that mentorship or guidance in the instance that it's not as easily accessible physically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is a great question. It's actually something Thalía and I were chatting about the other day, because even as adults now, we still seek a mentorship. We're still like the first in our family to do our respective careers, you know? And I think in terms of this for young people, is that there are people willing to help. And I think that's the importance of like social media. Like, there's so many resources out there, so many ways to connect. And just ask people for like an informational Zoom interview. Like, I'm sure if someone hit up Thalía via Instagram DMs, Thalía would give up their time and would like, yeah, see, shaking your head, would do that, or myself included, or anyone, Las Fotos Project team, or even, you know, your fellow peers. Your peers can be a mentor as well. And I think that's like the easiest way to access it. And it's like, technology is such an amazing tool to have accessibility.
Yeah, I just want to preface on that. I think it's really important to sort of seek that out. And how do you seek that out? Where do you go? I think we, like Helen and I were discussing, well, what does that look like for young adults? And I think a lot of the times, like, if you find, for me, it's like I was kind of, how I sought mentorship is like kind of asking questions to my peers, like, you know, and not kind of seeing them as different to me, you know. So like at the time when I was just shooting, a couple of like, some friends of mine were also doing 35, they were shooting film, and I would ask questions and kind of like nag them about like, what is the aperture, right? Like what's the, like that plug I just put aperture in. No, but is, you know, just kind of asking those questions. And also like, my DMs are always open. You know, I don't, like I said, I don't know everything, but if you ask me a question about like, whether it's like a technicality part or like visually or like how to get jobs, like I'll always respond, you know, like that's always been my approach. But I think a lot of the times too, I've just kind of focused on like manifesting that mentorship. And I know that sounds like kind of like a little witchy, but like, I feel like in a lot of ways,
You're very generous, actually.
Yeah. On that, like I called Diana upon my life. Like I said, like, I'm really like seeking out this, like, I feel lost in this way. And I feel like she kind of came my doorstep. I don't know. That's what worked for me, is really focusing on what like I need to be the artist that I need to be. And whether that's mentorship or like equipment, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the times I just never gave up. And that really like is what led me here, is that I like, at times it was discouraging. I was working a lot of jobs, and I felt like, maybe I wasn't getting, people didn't really understand a lot of like the styling that I would do. They thought it was, I've gotten like kind of negative comments on it as well, but I just never gave that up, because I knew that what I was creating was special and it was different and that it needed to be seen. So that's what really propelled me forward.
Well, speaking of needing to be seen, this actually ties in perfectly to the last question that came in, which is that have you been able to show your community work in a gallery or pop up in LA? Are there other opportunities that we can look forward to in addition to the book that you described to kind of encounter your work? And if the answer is we're looking for opportunities, then anyone who's listening,
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sure. The question was, have you been able to show your community work in a gallery or pop-up in LA? And I was saying, I know the work will be more accessible through the book that you're describing. But are there other opportunities to see your work that we should either rue that we missed or look forward to?
Yeah, I've been wanting to have like a solo show, but in the past I've had opportunities to be in art shows that I've loved. I've shot at or not shot, I've showed at, I mean, there's so many, there's like a few galleries, but I'm really trying to like curate my own like first solo show. For a while I felt like I wasn't ready, and I just didn't really have a lot to say, but this year I kind of made it a goal of mine to have like a very amazing interactive art show experience for like very like community oriented. And I know that's like a very like popularized word these days, but how I kind of approach that is just by involving them, whether that's like actual food vendors or local kind of like arts and craft vendors, kind of really creating this like interactive space has kind of been my goal for this year as well.
All right. Well, it's only March, so I have every expectation you'll achieve it. Thank you both so much again. Thank you to Isabel and Emily behind the scenes. We really appreciate your invisible support of tonight. Thank you to Converse, and thank you to everyone who joined us. It's really everything, the work you're doing is so important to the field, and it's Aperture's pleasure to be supporting it and sharing it with our audiences. So thank you for everything tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Helen.
Bye. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.